What's going on, man?
Hey,
How are you? Do you mind if I go grab some coffee real quick?
sure. No
Awesome. I'll
problem.
be right back.
Yeah, sure.
All right, back and ready.
I hope all your power and tech issues are back to normal now.
I just got my water back yesterday. So
Oh, really?
finally, yeah, I took my very first shower in over a week this morning. So you got me all clean, which is good.
Wow, it's incredible.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, eye-opening, I guess. Just how little I knew about what I use every single day is a little astonishing, right? And also another thing that's astonishing is how much water it actually takes to flush the toilet. I never knew this before. I had no idea. And it's like literally 5 or 6 bottles of water every single time.
Mm.
And when you have just one, like, because they're rationing cases of water, they were. So you have like one case of water per day, and there's 30 or so bottles in there. So it's like, how many times can I actually flush a toilet a day? Like 5 times, and I can't cook, I can't bathe, I can't do anything else. It's just crazy.
It was crazy. And what about the electricity?
That's so that was intermittent. That was like on and off. They instituted something called rolling blackouts because my lack of knowledge is gonna be exposed here. I guess the grid was too overprescribed, meaning they couldn't like actually deliver enough energy to meet the demand. So they were just instituting rolling blackouts, saying like, hey, for the next couple hours or so, we're just going to divert this power towards this area, screw this area. And then that just kept going on.
Wow, it's insane. It's all these things makes me think, infrastructure, all these things that are invisible and they're going on behind the scenes, and basically their job is if you never find out about these things, then they've done their job well, right?
Right. Yeah, and it's crazy because the things. Yeah, I was gonna say the things I was mentioning were like electricity. I don't know how the power grid works. I just had to start learning about that. Sewage, no idea how running water or the sewage system works. Internet, to a certain degree, I have literally no idea how the internet works. And just going through this the past week and a half or so has really exposed that. And it freaks me out a little bit, to be perfectly honest. Just how fragile it is, too. Never realized that.
Well, it is fragile, but it's also extreme times as well, right?
When is that going to stop, you think? Yeah.
Is it though? Because we have brought it. I mean, when it comes to what happened in Texas, for example, everything froze, and that happened. It was a disruption, basically, to the whole climate system of basically the polar region. When is it going to stop? Maybe in 100 years. I don't know if we manage to do everything right. That's my opinion.
Yeah, well, let's talk about like global. We just can't catch a break, man. It's like 2020, like global pandemic, like one thing after the other, and then 2021, it's just like more of the same. So, humanity, we need a break.
Well, I guess which brings me basically, I believe it ties very well to our topic today, which is basically to talk about your work with theDONUT, and basically the way I see that as a way to get people to have a better understanding of the world and of the global issues, and like have a better awareness of what's going on around us and in politics and in society and so on and so forth. So with that, I mean, if you're comfortable, we can begin, and you can tell me a little bit more about what you are doing and basically what you guys are building.
Yeah, for sure. So quick, long story short about what we're building. I think it's extraordinarily important to give people the tools that they need to make the best decisions for themselves. And what I mean by that is teaching critical thinking skills, teaching media literacy, providing easy access to information and all perspectives across the spectrum. Because, you know, everybody's got an opinion, yeah, but a lot of times those opinions have some sort of validity to them. So we just want to ensure that people actually have access to all of this type of information. And that kind of the inspiration for that kind of came, I guess, throughout my entire childhood. So when I was growing up, I've lived everywhere. So I've lived in like Hong Kong, India, Massachusetts, Texas, California, Michigan, North Carolina, you name it. And what I was always fascinated by was like the why and the how. So like, why does the world work, or how does the world work? And then why does it work like that? So growing up, I mean, I'm asking questions from people, you know, in Bangalore, India to Hong Kong, and just getting exposed to the information and how the world was just always fascinating to me. And then couple that with me just wanting to be like my dad when I was a kid. And every single morning, like clockwork, he would sit at that kitchen table because this is physical paper times, right? Like this is pre-internet, pre-digital age. So he'd sit at the table with an actual physical paper. But there was this whole like ceremony, or I guess event around it in the mornings, because my parents had trained the dog to go get the paper. So we lived in a house that had this like long driveway, and every single morning we'd wake up like 5 a.m. Again, I woke up early because I wanted to be like my dad. And it was this like big fanfare where we just opened the front door, and the dog he'd be so excited. His name was Trammell. He would just like beeline towards the end of the driveway, grab the paper in his mouth, like the happiest creature on the planet, and then just like sprint back up so we could grab the paper out of his mouth. And with that, I've always just been fascinated, you know, by just the news in general. And how could you not when you wanted to be like your dad and have the fanfare around it? So as I'm getting older, I keep reading the news, and I start to get exposed to, I guess, the internet phenomenon. And what I mean by that is the news industry changed almost overnight when the internet came around, because the news business was based off of advertising, right? And they had pretty much a monopoly on advertising until Facebook and Google came around, and that just flipped on its head real quick. So now what these news orgs are trying to do is trying to like catch up and still make the same amount of money that they were when they had this monopoly. So the incentive structure just changed. So a lot of what you saw is this kind of decrease to sensationalism, clickbait, narrative writing, right? Like only writing to one side. And then like the sky is falling kind of rhetoric, because what we found, and with social media, algorithmic data as well, like people engage more with things that make them fearful, things that make them anxious, things that make them outraged, right? Like those hate clicks. And that's kind of what I saw the industry devolve into. And I hated that, because as I mentioned, I got exposed to people all over the world. And what I realized is there are so many good people doing so many good things, and nobody talks about it at all, right? It's like you read the news and the sky is falling. No, it's exactly right. But there are these stories that are happening, and it's important to be reminded of those every single day. So at theDONUT, what we do is we serve up the actual news, right? No facts, just facts, no frills, right? No opinions, give you access to those opinions, and then couple that with hope and positivity for the future. Because like the future is going to be dope. I think it's going to be really cool. And I'm excited for the future. And news orgs do the opposite of that. They get you fearful for the future. But I'm excited for the future of humanity, and I want to surface all of these like positive stories that people, you know, that people run into every day.
So what's it like right now? How big is this? How big is theDONUT? I mean, in terms of subscribers and so on and so forth.
That's a good question. So we launched our newsletter about a little under a year and a half or so ago. And I had this policy that I didn't want to spend any money on advertising, right? At least initially, I wanted all of our growth, because I'm a product first guy. And if we just threw a bunch of money into advertising, sure, we'd get a lot of data back, but we wouldn't build advocates. And from a product standpoint, I think we had to learn who we were as a company, who we were writing to, just a little bit more about ourselves after we were launched. It was just, I guess, the fallacy of being a first-time entrepreneur kind of got to me, right? It's like, you don't think through some of the things that you should be thinking through. You know, people tell you stuff and you're like, no, I know better than you, right? And then you launch your company, and maybe you guys ran into this as well, but like you launch the company and then you expect every person to be just as excited about it as you are. But then, right. And then you step back and you take like this holistic view of it and you're like, well, this isn't great. That's not great. This could use a lot of work. You know, maybe it wasn't as great as I thought it was. And that's kind of like what happened to me. We ran into that brick wall, like right after we launched. And I had no experience in journalism, man, like none. So thinking back on it now, this, 25-year-old idiot, like, yeah, I'm going to change the news without having any experience in it. Like, yeah, that's beneficial in a certain way, but it's also not, because I have to learn what I didn't know before. So the first kind of couple of years of the Donut was like learning that, figuring out from a product standpoint, who we are, how to write, who we're actually, targeting, who's resonating with our message. And we went from absolute zero to approaching 20,000 subscribers now, again, 100% purely organically. And we're starting to figure out.
Say that again?
20,000.
20,000, yeah.
Yeah. So we're figuring out, who we are, who we're writing to, and also what our mission is. And we just like very recently landed on a lot of that stuff, which now gives us the opportunity to invest a little bit more on the growth side of things. So I'm excited for that.
So how are you figuring out all these questions?
Butting our head into a wall enough. No, but just creating strong feedback loops effectively. So to give you an example, every single subscriber email response comes directly to me. I read everything that our subscribers send in. Sometimes it's hundreds of messages a day. Sometimes it's like 2. Positive, negative, few and far between. And what our subscribers have been awesome about doing is suggestions, because we've gotten folks bought into our mission, which is to positively transform culture, conversation, and education in the US. Like those things need positive transformation. So people get really bought into that, and they take the approach of like somebody helping us. So they're like, hey, I love what you guys are doing. You guys do X, Y, and Z really great. I think it would be really cool if you did A, B, and C. And once we get enough of those responses, we compile them, and then we put them into visible format. And then once we get enough of these responses, we're like, okay, well, maybe if there's smoke, there's a fire, right? So if there's, people are asking us for a podcast, maybe we should go try to develop a podcast. Or like if people are asking us about a text message, maybe we should go and develop that. So it comes from always comes from the subscriber.
So do you have a lot of engagement there?
Yeah, so our engagement is like 2.5 times industry average based on like the 2021 number or 2020 numbers that just got released. So yeah.
Do you have a sense how that environment, you have created an ecosystem where there's Donut and then there's all the subscribers around that, and they interact with you guys, and basically it's like all of you are creating this positive change that you want to see in the media literacy and awareness of the people in the US. So do you have an idea if that was, or I mean, I don't want to bias the answer right now, but I would say, was that affected by the way your growth has been so far, like the methods that you used to grow so far?
In terms of like, are we attracting those types of people? Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And also like you have a referral system for growing your mailing list, right? And what I've seen and what I've been thinking about is how these systems help grow a niche. So basically the people are inviting others from their own tribe.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically it helps reinforce the core values of the niche.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like-minded people attract other like-minded people, right? And the individuals that we're going after, I call them the massive middle in the US. So a lot of what you hear in the news and in the media is like the polar sides, right? So like the hardcore, literally less than 20% of the country believes this stuff, but it's all that you hear about. Right. There is an analysis that Neiman Lab, it's a branch of the Knight Foundation, which is this massive journalistic enterprise, and they did an analysis of close to 50,000 cable news transcripts from like Fox News, CNN, MSN, so on and so forth. And what they found were the ideologically extreme or more ideologically extreme politicians got all the airtime. Right. So the point of this analysis was, the House of Representatives in the U.S. is not as ideologically extreme as it appears. It only appears that way because all we're hearing, all the platforms that are being publicized are the extreme positions. And we're leaving out literally like 80 to 85% of the whole country. And what we're doing is we're going after that 80 to 85% of the country, the ones that are comprised of like reasonable people whose belief systems could, span both politics in the U.S., both the Democratic and Republican Party. They don't feel like they have a home. They look at things on an issue by issue basis. They understand that there's nuance. They understand that, Twitter is not the be all end all, right? Like you can't boil down these extraordinarily complex positions to 200. You just can't to 280 characters. Something gets lost in translation. So like that's the tribe we're going after. And I think we've seen a lot of success with that initially because there's a lot of people out there and they're hungry for something that they don't have to spend a lot of time and mental effort on to feel informed or actually get informed.
Right. And you have a rating system. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we license one right now. Our plans on our roadmap is to build one out internally. So we use a company called MediaBiasFactCheck.com.
Maybe let's just say a little bit more about what that is, because maybe some people may have not seen the newsletter. So could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. It's similar. If you guys have seen like the media bias chart from Ad Fontes Media, or there's other news that like Smart News has an ideological kind of, I guess, designator in terms of publications. But effectively what it is, it just analyzes all of the articles published from a news publication and places it in an ideological bucket. So for instance, CNN tends to skew towards the left politically. CNN would be scored left ideologically by Media Bias Fact Check. Fox News, on the other hand, exact polar opposite, is scored right by Media Bias Fact Check. So in our newsletter, what we do is we will find and write about the biggest events, the biggest things happening that day before, and very succinctly and factually summarize them. Right. So this is just the event that happened. We're not opining on it. We're not analyzing it. We're saying like, this is just what happened. And here is why it could potentially be important. After we do that, we provide counterbalancing ideological links. So for instance, if we're writing a story yesterday, President Biden signed an executive order for a supply chain review in the U.S. So we write the story and say, hey, he signed this executive order for this to review supply chains in the U.S. Here's what the order says. And then after we say we communicate what the order says, we'll provide a left center news article that writes about that particular topic, and then a right center news article that writes about that particular topic. So if you want to delve a little deeper, if you want to dig deeper, you can figure out what the left side's saying about this particular news event and what the right side's saying. Because what you'll see, and our journalists, especially the younger interns, when they get exposed to this, just like it opens it's crazy to see the reaction. There's a quote that I love and we talk about all the time. It's like, there are lies, damned lies, and statistics. Because a lot of times what you'll find is like when you read a left-leaning news article, they'll use specific statistics, and there's ways that you can spin statistics, and it's the same statistic used different ways to communicate a different thing.
Right.
And I'll give you an example of that as well. So very recently, we read a survey or an analysis that was done on the homeless population in the U.S. And the way it was communicated was 1 in every 500 Americans was homeless, which is crazy, right? Like 1 in every 500 people. But then you can also communicate that same data point to say it's 0.2% of the population. When you say it that way, it's like, well, is it really that many? No, it's not. But then you can communicate it another way and say, oh, it's 600,000 people or whatever it is. And like, there are just different ways that you can communicate and present statistics to make people believe different things, right. Which is why it's important for us to link to both of those sides, because you'll get a more holistic view if you want to. But if you don't want to, then we told you what the event happened or was anyways.
Right, that's very, very useful, I believe. And maybe it makes sense to actually call out some of these tricks right?
Yeah,
So,
that's the next step. Yeah.
So I was wondering, I have seen the rating system, and I find it very, very valuable. I was wondering if you have any clue if people from like your readers are checking both sides of a topic. Like how often does someone break their own bubble and say, you know what, I'm just gonna check Fox this one time.
That's a great question, and one we don't have the ability to track just because we don't take a whole ton of info from our folks. It's all self-reported. But what data we do have is the ideological breakdown of our subscriber base. So we did a survey on that, and we found around 20 or so percent of our audience, I think it was 22%, identified themselves as centrist, which meant that they were either just down the middle, had views from both sides, that sort of thing. So again, the audience we're going after. And 39.2% of our audience identified themselves as right of center. And get this, 39.2%, the exact same, identified themselves as left of center. So we have the exact same even distribution of folks who lean left and lean right, which to me was awesome, because another barometer, another benchmark, because we get a lot of frustrated individuals who write in sometimes. And my barometer, my benchmark is if we are getting those types of folks equally writing in from the right and the left, we're probably doing something right. And that's what we've been seeing so far.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I would be curious though to know, I mean, how often someone checks the other point, the other part's viewpoint. That may, although I do understand the part about not tracking everything, not tracking every link, I guess, and categorizing people. Yeah. And the reason I was thinking about that is, I don't know if you are aware about this. I don't know the term in psychology, but the thing is that if you're sometimes when you're opposed, when you're presented with an opposing opinion, it makes you hunker down. Basically, go back into your own safety, and basically just reinforces what you were thinking already. So the reason I find that interesting is because by presenting both sides in the same place, maybe some people will just pick the safe title, and just dive into that. Although
and that's a great, because I see it literally every single day too, and it's so funny to see. It's that just like knee-jerk reaction that somebody has to their beliefs being challenged. And a lot of times it's taken as like a personal attack. You know what I mean? It's like, because my beliefs are like an extension of me. And that's what I'm trying to, I guess, extricate people from believing, is like, you can believe something, your beliefs kind of make you who you are, but they're not the be all end all of your political beliefs, are not the be all end all of who you are. Right? Like there's a lot of other things surrounding that. But a lot of what I see when folks do this knee-jerk reaction is, again, not having the tools, or not having thought through a position, or not having the information at hand to be able to communicate or articulate to somebody else something that they believe so strongly that they're willing to take action in some way, whether like speak out against something that they see, or, in extreme cases, like physical action. And it's just, you're right, because it's really interesting to see this kind of echo chamber emerge, and then combine that with that knee-jerk reaction when you get exposed to views from the other side. It's like, is there a way to pull people out of that? I believe there is, and that's what we're trying to do at theDONUT, right? Because to me, the only way to counter bad information is with just a deluge of good information. Just say it over and over again. Just like continue. It's like propaganda, right? But it's the same kind of like psychology behind propaganda, is you just say the correct information over and over and over and over and over and over again. And at some time it'll break through. Because I'm not a big fan of the alternative, because the alternative to me is to just ostracize people from society, or just tell them to shut up. And there's a lot of issues that I can see with either of those. And, we could get into those if you want to as well. But I just think giving people the tools and the ability to make their own decisions is the only way out of it without giving up a lot of freedom on an individual citizen side.
Right. And I was wondering about that. In the case of Twitter, you know, for example, they banned President Trump, basically. And when they banned Trump, there were these viewpoints that said, wait a minute, where do you draw the line? Right? How is that going to evolve? So it's one thing to say, and I mean, I don't have an answer, right? Because obviously he was damaging to the discourse or maybe people's beliefs and so on and so forth. So I don't have an answer to that. But what I'm trying to say is, it's one thing to say, I'm trying to get people to make their own sense, to make their own sense of the world, right? And it's another thing to say, I am going to close out hide some voices, to protect people from other viewpoints. So
and what you just said is the most important part of that, right? Is like, who determines that? Because there's no sort of objective standard. Like, if there was a set in stone, solid objective standard that as a society we agree to abide by, and we all can just look at it and the goalpost doesn't move, I think we might be talking about something different. But right now, we're not talking about that. We're talking about like the Wild West. There are no rules, and decisions to ostracize people from platforms or cast them out are made subjectively instead of objectively. Mm-hmm. So that is, I think, where, like you were talking about, I get a little concerned about that, just because, you know, I'm not going to be the one making the rules. And especially in the US, you get regimes, right, that swing back from conservative, liberal, conservative, right? So like right now, it's all liberal. It's not going to be that way forever. So, you know, from a liberal standpoint, it might be good to control some conservative voices, but to think that that's not going to come back on you, I just think that's wrong, right? Because it will, and it's a slippery slope. That's all I'm saying. Is it's something that I think we need to be very cognizant of and think about a lot. Because again, like as human beings, we haven't figured out the internet yet. The internet's been around like 20 years. Like, Facebook's not even 20 years old. Like, that's crazy to me. And these things just take time for human beings to acclimate to and figure out how to like live with each other on. Because this is an absolutely revolutionary, never seen before thing. And it changed all of humanity and all of information gathering forever. And to think that we'd figure it out in 20 years, I think is also a little ridiculous.
And there's a lot of impatience as well. Like things happen and we're like, there has to be a solution like right now. There's no time for discussion and so on and so forth. So some things have an urgency, which I believe is not real. It's not like something is on fire, right? So most of the times, I guess, at least.
Yeah, well, it's also crazy too, because everyone expects you to have an opinion, right? It's like everybody does. So there's some things that I just haven't made my mind up on, because I haven't learned it. Like, I want to have an educated opinion, and I have not learned enough about this particular topic yet. So until I've learned enough about that particular topic, I'm going to reserve judgment, and I'm not going to lend an opinion on it because I don't have one. But then what you'll find is folks are like, oh, you're lazy, or, it's like, no, I just want to be educated and I want to be informed when I talk about something. And I'm not afraid to be wrong. I'm not, but you don't need to have an opinion. You don't need to weigh in on everything. You just don't.
That's an option it's not given to people that they're not supposed to have an opinion about everything, that they can wait. They can hold off until, deciding something, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it saves a lot of fights in my experience.
And I was thinking about this thing, that you have both sides of the political spectrum on your newsletter. And I find it quite refreshing compared to the filter bubble that people get into while they're browsing their social media feeds. How you're presented only with views that just gonna make you more of the thing that you are already. They're just gonna reinforce your existing views and so on and so forth. So breaking the filter bubble, I believe that's a very, very important mission.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree. And another thing that a lot of folks don't talk about, but you'll start to see if the news industry continues to go this way, the news industry is kind of transitioning to a paywall model, right? So like a gated subscription. So like you pay me a set recurring fee, you get access to my content. And if news orgs write only to a single narrative, right, or are biased in some way, shape, or form, you have the same exact echo chamber thing going on, but with a reputable organization, right? Like people aren't as cognizant of it.
Yeah, and the thing is that this one is, I'm not sure it's worse, but it's definitely dangerous because it just gates content and good information based on how much you can pay, right? Which is not to say that journalists or media organizations should not be getting paid. I'm just saying that there's a risk that we're running there.
Right. And there's different ways to go about it, which is why we will always be, all of our basic news stuff, 100% free, always. Because I also don't like the idea, not just the echo chambers, but going a little further than that. Let's say that the news industry completes its transition to mostly paywall. So like 95%, 97, maybe more is if quality information is gated, you have to pay for it. Not everybody's going to pay for it. So if not everybody's going to pay for quality information, what's left to the people that aren't willing to pay? It's like shit information. It's bad information. And that is something that scares me as well. Right, is, you know, the lack of access to quality information, because I believe it's a human right to know what's going on around you. It terrifies me. Like last week, I had no idea when my water was going to be back on, no idea when my power is going to be back on. And the uncertainty of that terrified me more than the power and the water being out. Just not knowing anything about my situation. And I don't want people to be in that bucket when it comes to their lives, because there's so many folks that just feel helpless and like I used to, like a freaking canoe in the middle of a hurricane with a sail, right? You're just getting buffeted in every single direction. You have no control over anything. It's like, no, like I'll give you the paddle, or you should have the paddle, and like just row yourself out of the ocean. That's kind of the way I want to look at that stuff.
So how big is theDONUT right now?
20,000 people.
And I mean, in terms of the team?
Oh, in terms of the team, yeah. We have 4 full-time employees, 6 contractors, and 4 interns.
And just so we can understand better the structure, this is a sustainable company right now?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
that's,
so
go ahead.
Yeah, so we're self-funded. So I've put pretty much all my life savings into the company. So have my co-founders. And then we also raised a small friends and family investment round to start off with. And yeah, I mean, the model we're built off of is built for profitability and scalability. Mm-hmm. It's like we take the creator focus model and apply it to business. So we distribute our content on wholly owned channels, as I call them. And as we were alluding to earlier, there's been some instances where people have just had access to an audience or their ability to distribute a message just cut off overnight. Another recent example in the news industry would be in Australia, where Facebook just blocked access to sharing any sort of news articles.
Right, and that's incredible.
Yeah, and publisher traffic dropped like 50 to 90% overnight, like just overnight. So just to clarify what that means is if you're a news publisher, a third-party entity that you have no control over whatsoever has the ability to turn off your revenue stream and handicap your company. And that again scares me, which is why we have that wholly owned channel distribution model. We send out emails, so email newsletter. We own the email list. We don't share it with anybody. Privacy is tantamount to us, but we own that email list. So we can take that with us to whatever platform will work with us. Same thing on the text message side of things. Same thing on podcasts, which is why our kind of content expansion is going to come with more newsletters, text messages, and podcasts. It's because it's also a direct conduit to people. We have no middleman. in there as well. So we actually get to talk directly to the folks and they get to talk directly back to us, which I love.
Mm. And I believe people are waking up to that, even on the other side of things, like as I would say, I'm not sure it's the best word, but consumers of news. I've seen that with my friends, and they're starting to realize, you know what, I'm not getting access to all the things that I would like to have access to when I'm on Facebook. And right now, there are other cases where Facebook might be blocking some content, right, and not publicizing it, or banning accounts and so on and so forth. And people are starting to realize, wait a minute, the thing that we've relied on for so long, it's not so much in our control anymore, right?
And that's the core, like you just touched upon the core of my message. The core of my message is people are smart. They're not stupid, right? And if you just continue to expose folks to information, they'll be like, well, yeah, I need to change what I'm doing. And with documentaries like The Social Dilemma and just all of the information coming out about the polarization and the reason for like people are starting to wake up and understand it and change their habits, which is what makes me hopeful. Is because if we are cognizant of stuff, we know what to do, and then we're able to act upon that correct information. Like that's my whole pitch, right? Is like that's it. And if that continues to work, and if it continues to progress, I'm going to be a happy camper.
Mm-hmm. And I believe this thing becomes more important in the years to come, as we're facing increasingly complex issues, right? If you thought the coronavirus was challenging, wait for technological unemployment, wait for climate change, artificial intelligence, like warfare, warfare between countries, whatever. Right, so we're running against, like, towards basically increasingly complex issues, and that's why I believe the ability to do good sense making is very important in those cases as well.
Agreed.
Increasingly important.
Agreed, and also space. That's another one that I haven't heard a lot of folks talk about. Space is the new frontier now, right? Where like people are battling for. It's like the colonism. Or am I saying that right? And then, or like the American frontier, it's the same thing, but in space, and there's no previous settlers. So it's like absolutely unsettled territory with unfettered access to trillions, if not more, dollars. It's up there, and all of the countries are in a race for it now. So I think we're going to see some sort of like Star Wars, but in actual reality at some point in the future. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing that's kind of terrifying, but you know, we're resilient folks. We're resilient creatures, us human beings. So I hope we can work through
it. So I'm just trying to understand about the medium that you're using, the newsletter, and why did you choose that?
Well, it's easy, first off, right? And well, I thought it was a lot easier than it was. I thought it was just as simple as like, you just type stuff out and then you load it into something and you click send. It's like, no, it's not that easy. But that's the reason why we used it or started with it, is it was easy, and then it fit our model, right? That wholly owned distribution model. And just kind of circling back to that, built for profitability and scalability, what that means is we have a fixed cost to create the newsletter. Mm-hmm. We have a fixed cost to create a podcast. We have a fixed cost to create a text message. That's fixed for us. Our revenue drivers are subscribers, so number of people we can get our message out to, and engagement, right? How engaged are those folks, which affects the rate, the CPM rate that we can charge to our advertisers. So once we surpass that fixed cost in terms of revenue or being able to charge our sponsors, we're in the black, right? We're not losing money, we're making money, and we can reinvest that money in the growth of the company. So if we can continue to expand our content across these wholly owned distribution channels, then we're going to be in a really good position. Because again, once we break even or hit that break even point, between being able to charge subscribers and what we're paying to operate and send out the newsletter, it's all gravy from there.
Mm. And how long did that take to happen?
It took us about a year.
Okay, it's not so bad.
It could be worse. It also could have been a lot better. Like one of my donut original sin was, because again, all things come back to me, right? As the founder, the leader. So everything is my fault, which has been great, right? It's been a really, really good learning experience for me. It's made me better as a person. But my original sin was not knowing what it actually entailed to run and operate a business. So during the planning stage and initial fundraising stage, kind of handicapped ourselves. And again, it's something that I've had to learn from. And I think like our team is incredible because the fact that they've given me the space and allowed me to make the mistakes that I've made to this point, and they've still been like, yeah, we believe in what we're doing, and we still think you're the guy. It's humbling. It's very humbling.
So what's the next step now? You mentioned going after some new channels and so on. So would you like to say some more about that? Yeah,
so we're doing a lot of what I'm excited about, things in 2021. So the first one is we're going to do a design refresh. So roll out a brand new email design for the Daily Donut. We're going to add 2 additional newsletters that's coming up over the next quarter or so. One of them is called Positive Donut. It's 100% positive news, right? Like all of the underreported good stuff that you just don't see in the world, we'll surface that for you. We'll also launch Futuristic Donut, which is all like about the future. So emerging technologies, you want drones, you want space stuff, you want medical breakthroughs. That's your newsletter. We're also launching a text message. We're calling it the hot button. It's get informed in 60 seconds or less, right? Like that's legitimately no frills. It's just to you every single day, what you need to know, in, out, you're done. We're launching a podcast. It's called Rocket Launch Pod because we're a little bit obsessed with space in the future. It's all about space. And then we have a education side of the business. We're spinning off a business unit and focusing on creating content that can be used in the classroom to help teach and further digital literacy skills like media literacy, reading comprehension. We haven't figured out how to succinctly call it, but like verbal EQ is kind of what I'm calling it. It's like the ability for individuals to have productive, rational, reasonable discussions around hot button, complex topics. So just providing the skills for that so people don't retreat into that shell like we were talking about earlier. So those are all the things we kind of have on the docket. And I'm stoked for it, man, because we figured out who we are as a company. We figured out what we're doing. We figured out our very succinctly and clearly our mission. And now is the time to actually put it in practice.
Oh, fantastic. The part about the educational, I believe the digital literacy, it's so important. Yeah, you and me both. And that was something we kind of stumbled into as well. We just one day woke up and we're like, wait a second. So there are a few thousand teachers that are using the newsletter, something that's not designed for use in the classroom. They're using it? Yeah, man, like daily and weekly. We have literally thousands of teachers on there. And that was eye-opening for me, but also I love it because I was I love education, but I hated forced learning, what I call it. Like a teacher stands up in front. This, memorize this.
Yeah, exactly. And then spit it back to me and I'm going to grade you on that. It's like, well, I didn't learn that way. And I didn't like other people telling me what to learn. I am a lifelong student. I'll learn about the stuff I'm passionate about. I just spent 100 hours over the past 3 weeks learning about pirates, right? Like that was never taught in school, but I'm fascinated by it. Now I can draw a direct line between the fall of feudalism in Europe and the rise of the American Revolution in the colonies through piracy. Right? So it's like that type of stuff I'm interested in learning about. I want to provide content that gets kids excited, and is different than the lecture-based memorization type learning. That's based on like real world experiences, based on gamified content, that type of stuff, which is why I don't know if you can tell I'm excited about it.
It's fantastic. This is great ideas. So the past few months, I guess, or maybe we can say the past year, we've seen dozens of writers going solo, with the Substacks and all that stuff. So many people are creating their own blogs, and sometimes I was just thinking it feels like the web is coming full circle.
Yeah.
Right? We're just coming back from where we started, and I remember must have been around 20 years ago, I was just going into Blogger. I remember that, Blogspot. And we had all these blogs and people were writing incredible pieces and so many things. And I was just wondering about your thoughts, if you have any thoughts regarding that. How do you see this transition from centralized media to decentralized?
Yeah, well, I think decentralized is the future, right? Because folks are starting to wake up and realize where the value was all along, So I can give you an example from my perspective. So I run a media company. If we don't have content to send out, we literally don't have a business. Well, I'm not going to sit and create all of the content in perpetuity. I'm just not going to do it. So what's the other option? The other option is to pay somebody to create the content. But again, going back to, I don't have a business if I can't get the content created. Well, who actually has the power in that scenario? And I think what people are starting to realize is creators and individuals have a lot more power than they previously realized. And I think that's awesome, right? Because that's where our best ideas come from. That's where all of our art comes from. That's where, I love it. And what we're kind of a home for, and what I've been seeing, is it does take a special kind of individual to want to kind of branch out on their own and stay on their own. Right? So a lot of times it's hard to grow a list past a certain point. You'll be doing a lot of admin stuff yourself. Maybe your earning potential is not quite where you want it to be. And then maybe you're just not in contact with like-minded individuals, right? Like maybe you just want to talk to people and have that more of that sense of community. And if you want those types of things instead of being out on your own, that's where we come in, right? As we provide the support. We're very creator focused in terms of our incentive model and payment structure. Our writers are incentivized to see the business succeed, and they get a piece of the business succeeding as it succeeds. And that's the kind of model I want to continue to scale with. Is we need to be creator focused. The world is becoming creator focused. And in my mind, that's an absolutely amazing thing. I want to foster and encourage that creativity and give people a home to explore it without fear of repercussion or fear of blowback, and we can absorb a lot of, as a company, we have the ability to absorb a lot more than an individual does. And as long as we're just this beacon, I want to be a beacon for the antithesis of what people see the news industry as right now. As long as we continue to be that beacon for that, again, it goes back to not being overly dependent on one single individual. So if the donut's too dependent on me, maybe something happens. I go belly up tomorrow and then the donut ceases to exist. I don't like that. So I want to be able to democratize our mission and give people a playground where they can explore their ideas without fear of being ostracized.
That's beautiful.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's beautiful that you're looking at the whole ecosystem, not just your own newsletter, but basically you're just creating the space for other people to thrive as well. Thrive as well. Yeah. I've been trying to do that my whole life. And it's really cool to actually be able to do it professionally, you know what I mean? And wake up every single day and actually be happy to go to work instead of, I tried my hand at corporate America and I just couldn't do it, man. I just couldn't do it. So. What's the hardest part about what you're doing right now? I mean, in terms of, we can have this answered in two ways. In terms of, first of all, I would like to know in general, in terms of your mission, but more practically, I'm just curious as Peter, who's running theDONUT and just trying to make this thing and grow it. What's it like in terms of what's the challenge you're facing? And because we've seen other people struggle with trying to create their own presence online and create a newsletter and grow it, make it a sustainable business, and be able to create their niche and their audience and basically be able to live like that and sometimes leave the office job behind. So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I can start that off with kind of a story that I think illustrates a lot of the struggle that I personally went through and like we went through as a company. So I've mentioned a few times, early stage when we were just launching, I just didn't know what it took, what it entailed. And it might be a good thing, right? Because if I actually knew what it's like you mentioned, what it actually takes to build something to make it successful from the ground up, I may have never started, but I'm glad I did. The lowest point I ever this was a month or so, maybe 2 months or so after launching the newsletter, and was not prepared, right? So I'm working literally 20-hour days. That's no bullshit, like 20-hour days, sleeping 4 hours. I'm miserable. I have no money, right? Like I put all my money into the company. So I'm getting these eviction notices on the door. My utilities are getting shut off for real this time because I can't pay them, not because, there's a winterization issue. But I'm, dealing with all that stuff. And then 3 days after I'd launched the newsletter, my longtime girlfriend at the time, who I thought we were going to get, I thought she was the one, broke up with me because of the company. Right. So like all of this stuff is swirling. And occasionally, like every Sunday or so, I would just get in my car and I had no place to go. I'd just be bawling my eyes out. So I'd be like, what in the world? What the hell did you do? You're an idiot. Like, what did you get yourself into? This is just stupid. Like, you should just give up. And everybody's telling me to give up too. And I'll never forget sitting in my car 3 hours away from getting all my stuff tossed on the street. It's like me and I have a dog. His name's Calvin. So all of our stuff's about to get tossed on the street because I'm $450 short on rent. $450. So I'm like picking up the phone in my car, again, bawling, just calling everybody, being like, hey, here's the situation, and I call my mom, and my parents were like a last resort because they had told me from the get-go, they're like, you're an idiot for going to do this and you're going to do it on your own, right? Like, we are not an option. And that was what was communicated to me again from my mom. And I'm so glad that they did it. But what she suggested is she goes, your sister's been working summer jobs and she's like a good little saver, and you should give her a call. And to give you an idea of who my sister is a neuroscience major student at Notre Dame. So she's a college kid. And I don't know how your college experience was. I didn't have any money in college, right? Like, I was poor, and all the money I had, I spent it on food and alcohol. And I remember picking up the phone and calling my sister. And as the phone's ringing, I'm going, this is the lowest point of my life. Because like, I was supposed to be this like hotshot founder CEO. Like, I thought of myself as this like super cool, brilliant kid. And calling my college age sister begging for money. And I'll never forget that. But the whole point of this story is, I don't know what got me through that. I don't know what got the rest of our team through that, but I'm sure as hell glad that I made it through. And the only thing I think that kept me going was the successful people in my life that I had talked with said and success is very simple according to their terms. There's two things that you need to do. The first thing is start something, because most people just don't take that leap. So I had checked that box, right? Again, probably from an idiot perspective, but I checked that box. And the second box was don't ever give up. So pick one thing, start it, and then don't give up. And I think that I really took that to heart, and the mentors in my life kept like pounding that into my head, because it does get better. Like, it really does. I don't know if y'all have gone through anything like that at Viral Loops, but from my experience, like writing that stuff out and getting to the point where, because it's not all highs, there's a lot of lows, but the highs are freaking intoxicating, man. Like, they're intoxicating. And that's what I'm chasing every single day. So the biggest challenge for us, I would say, is how much work we have left to do. And like, sometimes that can get into your head mentally, where you're like, man, I just worked a month and a half, 18-hour days to push this big initiative out. And it's already breaking. I got to go back and work on it again. And I know next month we're going to have to go through this sprint to launch something else. And we're like 5 years away from, and that just gets in your head. So I don't know if you've run into that as well, but I would say those
So
are
basically what you're saying is that the challenge is to keep yourself motivated at the times when you don't see the end of it, right?
yeah, it's meant, and it's all mental too. It's all mental. That's the toughest part. It's just a grind. And it hopefully won't be that way always, but if it is, I'm prepared for it. And that's the thing that, a lot of times in my head, I'm trying to communicate is like, this for me is a 10, 20, maybe longer year deal. So it's just very recently got into my head that this is a marathon, not a sprint. So like, I'm here for the long haul. And I think that also helped a switch flip in my head too, because I used to be this like money hungry little shit, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm going to start this company. It'll be $1 million in 3 months and then I'm going to sell it. Right. It's like, no, it's not how it works.
Are you familiar with Simon Sinek?
Oh yeah.
He talks about the infinite games.
Oh yeah.
I think that's a very useful concept to have, like how what you're doing. If you're thinking like it's a war, then in the war someone wins, but in business it's not like that, and you have to play the infinite game.
Yes. Yeah. And have fun doing it. That's defining and that was what was a struggle for me for the longest time, because running a business, this is what nobody tells you. Like, yeah, you get to set your own schedule, and yes, it's amazing. And I would not trade it for the world, but just like any other job, there's stuff that you have to do that you don't want to do. And that is kind of what helped me is like, it's not going to be this way forever. I hope it's not going to be this way forever. But what really got into my head recently is like, yeah, it is, but focusing more on the wins and focusing more on the things that you love to do is where your brain needs, like, it's where my brain needs to be anyways. Because if you just continuously dwell on the negative and on the bad, that at least it turns me into a person I don't like.
Mark Manson posted this thing yesterday. He said, good life is not a life without problems, it's a life with good problems.
I like that, because like if you have no problems to solve, where's the fun in that?
Something meaningless as well.
Yeah, man. Where's the fun in life at that point? Right? If every day's the same, you have no struggle. It's like, to me, that's no fun.
All right. And what about running the business in terms of like the more practical things? In terms of growing the business and this kind of managerial things you have to go through, what's holding you back?
Well, right now,
is it a matter of manpower or just knowledge?
Yeah, I wouldn't say knowledge. I would say manpower a lot of, and a part of the struggle is like when you're scaling or when you're early stage. And I'm sure you guys may have gone through this as well too. Like everybody's doing multiple jobs, right? Like I'm doing, 5 jobs at this time right now. And as with everything, if you try to do a lot of things, you'll do like a lot of things may be okay, but nothing exceptional. So as we continue to grow and scale and add people and bandwidth to the team, I think you'll only see the quality of the company increase, because right now, and on the content side, we're good because we've invested so much into the quality of the content, right? Like that's exactly where it needs to be. But from an admin side and the operation of the business, that's where we still need to get a little bit more efficient. And things are falling through the cracks just as like at every other startup, because people are doing a lot of jobs. So from a bandwidth perspective, I would say that's the biggest challenge. And it's not unique to us either. You see it with every company that scales and grows. Stuff breaks, just what happens. And, you got to fix it and then continue to iterate. And it's that constant, it's just, it never ends, the infinite game, as you said.
I know what you're talking about. So what would you say to someone who's starting their own newsletter right now, maybe to create a business like theDONUT, like a curator basically online? What would you say to them?
Mm-hmm. Find somebody to hold you accountable first and foremost. And what I mean by that is when we were first starting off, I had a lot of enablers and nobody to hold us accountable. And if somebody had sat down and been like, let me question your business plan a little bit more, we would be in a much better position than we are right now. So that would be first and foremost. I would say number two, know what you're trying to do, right? So I actually have a plan and an idea, because if not, then you'll feel the same way that I did for the first, year or so, and just lost and miserable. Whereas if you have a plan and you have a very clear defined goal and mission, and you wake up every single day to accomplish that, it's going to make the tough times a lot easier. And I would also say, just don't give up, man. Just don't give up, because it's going to suck. It's going to be hard. There's going to be a time where you hit a plateau, right? Like you might be growing like a weed from 0 to 500 subscribers, which may not seem like a lot, but I remembered literally our first 13 subscribers. So, when you start to see that growth, you get to 500 subscribers, don't let that go to your head. You got a long way to go. But keep doing what you're doing well over and over and over and over again. Because if you do hit that plateau, it's not forever. Everybody hits it, right? For us, it was around 2,000 subscribers. We were stuck at 2,000 for a couple of months. Then we finally broke through that. And then it was 5,000. We got stuck at 5,000 for a little bit. And we broke through that. We got stuck at 10,000, right? And you just get stuck at places, and you need to figure out how to grow and scale. And for some folks, it's harder than others. But what I would say is, if you go in with a plan and what you're trying to do and trying to accomplish, it makes it easier, because you could be like, I want to just build a lifestyle business where I make $5,000 a month, just me, on Substack writing. And that's wonderful. That's awesome. That's very achievable. But figure out what you need to go achieve that. If you want to build a massive media conglomerate, you might have to take a different path. So knowing what you're getting yourself into, or knowing what you want to do to start off with, to me is it's the biggest challenge, first and foremost. Mm-hmm. It's narrowing down what exactly you want to do was the toughest part for us. Or for me.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's really useful. And it's something I really find as well in viral loops. It's part of my job, I guess, leading the product. I'm just thinking all the time, what exactly are we doing? Why are we doing this? What are we doing? What are we doing? Again and again and again and again. You have to refine all that and make it more crystal clear, in your head. It has to be like pure and clear, and drives the whole team and then the company, and basically affects what you put out to your customers and to everyone. So I believe it's just very core to what you're doing.
Yeah. How do you guys how do you set your, roadmap, and how do you guys do feedback loops and project management and stuff like that? Because you guys push features out a lot, and they're good ones too.
I'm trying to do that. Yeah. So basically we have a process where we get feedback from either me talking to customers, the whole team is talking to customers, customer success is talking to customers, sales. We get a lot of feedback from customers and also lost customers. And we have a process where we consolidate all that. And then we're just going through that, I would say, on a weekly basis, and we'd see what comes up. But then there's also the part that is a vision and basically what we want to create. For example, right now we're focusing on helping people create this kind of newsletter businesses. So we're trying to focus on that use case and help people better do that and create a sustainable thing online, a sustainable business. And so with that comes a clarity about where we're lacking short, what do our customers need the most. And there's a lot of talks with the customers as well. I try to get in as many calls as possible and figure out what they need, basically. And
yeah. So you're marrying the mission with subscriber feedback effectively?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, basically the mission helps us always focus and know when something is relevant or not. Right? So not every feedback that you get is going to be relevant, because of course Viraloops is a platform. It's not only a newsletter about the newsletter use case. So we serve other use cases as well. And sometimes we get feedback that maybe it's not it is important, but maybe it's not our primary focus at the moment. And we have a very small team, I tell you that. We're just 10 people in Varloops. And so we have to be really focused and know what we're trying to achieve at each quarter, which basically changes. It's not fixed, but it changes after a few months, right? So we have set a goal and then we just move towards that by iterating on the feedback and what we think we should build as well.
Yeah. So, and that's the tough part, right? Is like figuring it, because we struggle with that sometimes too, is differentiating between constructive criticism and like nitpicking.
Right.
So like, do you guys have any sort of like, how do y'all approach that? Is there any specific thing that you do to like weed through it and figure out which is which?
So one principle that we have is that no matter what the customer says, or their tone, or the way they say it, or anything like that, the customer has a reason for saying what they're saying. And if they're giving you feedback, maybe you think that, you know, there's two ways to respond to that. One way is to say, they didn't get the product. Maybe they're not the right kind of customer. But on the other hand, you might say, wait a minute. They have some value there. What they say has some value there. So you have to think, okay, what made them get to that realization, that thinking, right? So you have to be empathetic and say, wait a minute, maybe there's some truth there. And then basically there's truth almost everywhere. Point is, you have to know then if it makes sense for you to focus on that at the moment, or maybe postpone that for a bit later, because maybe it's not, if you're working on something, you have to ship it. You cannot always interrupt what you're doing and like change direction and so on and so forth. You have to ship, because I believe shipping is more important than shipping the best things.
Right.
Right. The
yeah, you just got to get it out. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I was more speaking about,
and iterate.
Yeah, I was more talking about, that's exactly right. There's no secret. Right? The secret is, there is no secret. That is the secret. But yeah, I was more talking of in like a content standpoint, is we'll get folks that respond back and they're like, well, the way that you phrased this was, you know, X, Y, or Z. And we'll be like, well, how would you suggest we phrase it? And, you know, they'll like come back with something, and we'll have to figure out whether or not it's like, okay, you know, this is somebody who, like, to your point, like, why are they communicating this? Is it on behalf of somebody else, right? Or are they advocating on behalf of somebody else because they feel like they have to? Or is it something that they have a reason for actually saying? Because we see both of those. And the hard part is like figuring out the person who has that firsthand knowledge versus somebody who's just like, I don't like it, you know, and we don't want to, the constructive criticism doesn't come from a place of hate. It comes from a place of love. And that's what we try to figure out.
I would say that when there's polarities and there's this kind of contrast, I would say look to a higher level, like look to the values. So you can don't explain why you wrote it like that, explain the values behind your writing like that, and try to understand what their values are on the topic, and maybe say, we value this kind of approach, and we value epistemic thinking, and basically thinking with the science, and we trust the science. These are our values. That's how we understand the world. What's yours? And see where that collide. Maybe that collide, or maybe they don't. They just don't know it, right?
Yeah, that's great, because we typically do like, here's why we did this. We don't incorporate that broader trend, and that if we could illustrate that, I think it would be a lot better. Like, you're right.
Yeah. So Peter, I mean, in terms of my, I guess, checklist for this interview, I'm pretty covered. It was quite enjoyable for me. Would you like to ask something yourself?
Yeah, for sure.
You would like to ask us?
Yeah. I mean, I guess what's next for y'all in terms of the newsletter referral? I'm going to ask a selfish question.
Sure. So basically, we're trying to increase the value that we provide to our customers, and so we want to help you do your job better. And we understand that it's a tough job, and these are not like huge businesses that have tons of people just waiting around to be able to do something. And it's just entrepreneurs like you, and our goal is to create the platform and the tools that help you focus more on creating basically what your customers want, which is content, better content, more content, and so on and so forth. So our vision is to take away the acquisition part of the creating a new company and help you with that. And whatever that takes. Right now, it's just growing the mailing list with referrals. Maybe after that, there's something else.
Yeah. Where did Viral Loops come from? Or you founded it, right? You started it?
No, not me. My colleague Savas is our CEO, and Thomas as well, and Thomas is co-founder. So Viral Loops is based in Greece, in Athens, in Greece, and London as well.
Beautiful. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful.
And well, we started, must have been now close to 5 years, a bit more.
Awesome.
It's been quite a journey.
As far as like your customer breakdown, so if y'all are based in Greece, and I know you have offices in the UK, I think as well.
Correct.
Where's most of your customer base?
In the US.
US. That's interesting. Did you guys have that? Did you design it that way, or did it just kind of happen like that?
Not sure. Never thought about that. To be honest, I believe it just happened like that. We didn't try to. Yeah. But maybe the way we are doing things, well, we have been on Product Hunt a couple of times, or maybe more as well. And so maybe that affected that as well.
Yeah. Is there, if most of your customers are based in the US, is there like a support issues that y'all run into just because of the time differences? Or like how do you?
We have a night shift support.
Okay.
We call it night shift. It's not night shift over your side.
Yeah, it's been interesting for because we just started working with some offshore teams and offshore folks like in Pakistan and Eastern Europe, and just that time, like navigating the time difference is always really interesting. So you guys have like an entire team, like a support team that works on the night shift, probably a support team that works station. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
How many of those do you get? Like a lot of the requests at all? I guess it's enough for one person to handle, so maybe not.
Yeah. So I would say it's half of what we get in a day. Half of that is over the night, over the European night.
When, as far as like struggles go for y'all, like the same question you asked me, like what do you guys struggle with, or what's your biggest challenge right now?
I'd say is what I already told you about clarifying the vision and the mission of the company and the product, and aligning the team behind that so that everyone on the team knows exactly what we're doing, and being able to do their own sense making and take their own decisions in terms of how to treat the customers, what to create, how to create it. You know, we take decisions all the time when we create things, and my colleagues as well. And they have to be able to understand the problems of trying to solve and why we're here, right? So that's a big challenge, I believe. It's from my side, and figuring out the best way to serve our customers. That's also a big one. So the kind of features that our customers would need the most to succeed.
Yeah. So as far as like communicating the vision and all of that to employees and the folks on the team, how do you do? Because that's one of the things that I recently realized. It's like, okay, we need to, on a very granular level, like detail all of this stuff out, like take it from here and get it into their hands. Like how are you guys doing that?
There's not a set process. We write things down, communicate to the team. Eventually, I believe all these things get combined into something that maybe you can say that's our values, and you can point people, that's our principles, you can point people to that. But at the beginning, you just have to put them out. And I believe once you do that regularly, it becomes it's like a muscle, like, and you just repeat the same things and people learn. Eventually they learn, they understand more. So you just have to keep doing it and just keep getting them out of your head and writing things down.
Yeah.
I believe in it's one of those things that doing it matters more than how you do it, right? If you can just send a text in Slack or anything like that, that's fine.
Yeah. Do you think there's an issue? Did you have any trouble getting over because I have this thing where like I want perfection, right? So it used to make me apprehensive to share something when it wasn't quite ready or I didn't think it was quite ready. Do you have that issue? And if so, like how'd you come over that?
I believe it comes back to what we said earlier. You have to sip things even when you're not ready. Like sipping is more important than sipping the best. I like the concepts from, well, you might have seen that, the product management concepts. We do that a lot. And I say, instead of trying to build a cake, to bake a cake, they say build a cupcake, which is like a cake, but it's small. So we're taking the cake and we say, okay, the best thing would be to have a full like tray of a cake, but can we do a slice? That's really good. It has everything, right? So reduce the scope, but not the quality. Does it make sense?
That's really good. That's
do less of the whole thing, but do it right. And then repeat.
That's a really good. Do you mind if I use that? Where'd you get that from? That's really good.
I've seen it several times from Intercom as well. There's the guys at Basecamp. They talk about that as well. Check out the book. It's called Shape Up.
Shape Up?
Yes.
Who's it written by?
Just Basecamp, Shape Up.
Okay. So if I type in like Shape Up Basecamp, it'll pop up.
Yeah. I believe the guy is called Ryan Singer, but I'm not sure.
Cool. Yeah. And that's the next frontier for me is I figured out how to be a journalist and I got to figure out how to be a business owner. So you're helping me. Thank you.
That's fun.
Awesome, man. I mean, as far as like I could probably sit here and talk to you for another like hour and a half.
That'd be great.
Yeah, but I'm gonna have to run here in 15 minutes or so. Right. Is there anything else you wanted to cover or touch on? Just to make sure we can get to it.
I'm happy with this so far. So we're gonna post a transcript and maybe something on a blog and probably a video as well on YouTube. And if you wanna send me links for stuff that we can promote, let's say new initiatives, anything like that, anything you want to share, feel free to send that over and we'll put it up there in the blog. It would be a good opportunity, I believe, for you to get this kind of exposure to our subscribers. I'm going to use my referral link.
Do it. I mean, do it, man. I'll send you all that stuff. And also you'll have to send me or your size because we're launching some more merch stuff.
Oh, cool.
Like we actually put some money and time into investing in designing that. And we could send you guys some samples.
Sure. That'll be nice.
But yeah. No, and you're going to be nice to me, right? You're not going to be mean to me.
I'm going to be brutally honest. That's what you need.
Hey, as long as you don't take my words out of context, I'm good with whatever you want to say.
You're saying about the interview?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I
thought it was about the t-shirts. No, we're not going to do that. No way. Probably just direct transcripts from the discussion. I'll see. My colleague Apostle that writes all our blog posts will do it. So I'll send it over, of course, for you to review.
Cool. I mean, we're customers of yours, so I'm not all that concerned. I was just teasing you because you know it's because you know it's like typically there's a lot of bloggers who like take things and write them out of context to do
We'll
those.
just write a clickbait article. I'll just write a clickbait. I don't know what.
Founder of theDONUT is an alt-right idiot. And he's probably going to be like, yeah, we'll get some hit pieces. But.
You'll never guess how this guy started his business.
That's funny. You'll never guess what they're trying to do.
Yes, exactly.
Oh man, that's funny. But no, this has been awesome, man. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, been a pleasure connecting and getting to chat with you for a little bit, and hopefully we can do it again sometime. Because I had a blast.
For sure. Would love that.
Awesome. Right. Well, Demetrius, pleasure, man. Let me know if you need anything. I'll send through the links and whatnot. And
take care.
All right, you as well.
Thanks a lot.